The customer is always right. In hell. Welcome to Hellmart. Nobody liked Gary Thompson. As a customer service representative at Megamart, he had spent years dealing with the worst of humanity. Every day he was yelled at, insulted, and occasionally threatened over expired coupons and return policies. The customer is always right, his manager would remind him, even when they're obviously wrong. Gary hated that phrase. So when he dropped dead from a stress-induced heart attack, he wasn't surprised to wake up in hell. What did surprise him? He was standing behind a cash register. A small, red-skinned demon in a vest appeared, holding a clipboard. Gary Thompson? Welcome to Hellmart. Your eternal shift starts now. Gary blinked. Wait, what? The demon grinned. You worked customer service in life. Now you'll do it forever. Gary looked around. Hellmart looked exactly like Megamart, except everything was worse. The lights flickered non-stop. The shelves restocked themselves with garbage. The customers. Oh God, the customers. A woman with 4 heads screamed at a cashier. A werewolf in a Hawaiian shirt chewed on a severed arm. A zombie toddler threw a jar of eyeballs at an employee. Gary turned to the demon. Please tell me this is a joke. The demon laughed. Nope. Welcome to retail. For eternity. Chapter 2. The First Customer from Hell. Gary sighed and forced on his Hellmart employee name tag. Okay, let's get this over with. His first customer was a giant cockroach in a business suit. It placed a rotting human foot on the counter. I'd like to return this. Gary winced. Do you have a receipt? The cockroach's antennae twitched. Number. But the customer is always right. Gary forced a smile. Our return policy requires proof of purchase. The cockroach hissed. I want to speak to a manager. Gary sighed. Fine. He pressed a button. A massive, flaming demon appeared from the ceiling, smoke billowing from his nostrils. His name tag read, Korgoth, Regional Manager. Korgoth cracked his knuckles. What seems to be the issue? The cockroach shrieked. I demand a refund! Korgoth grabbed the cockroach, swallowed it whole, and burped flames. Then he turned to Gary. Customer service score. 8 out of 10. Next time, offer a store credit. Then he vanished. Gary just stared. What the actual hell? Chapter 3. The Coupon Apocalypse. A ghostly old woman floated up next. She dropped a mountain of coupons onto the counter. These should cover my purchase. Gary flipped through them. Ma'am, these expired in 1642. The old woman narrowed her glowing eyes. The customer is always right. Gary clenched his jaw. That phrase doesn't work when you're dead. The woman screamed in Latin, and suddenly the walls started bleeding. The store shook. A hole in the floor opened, revealing an abyss of screaming souls. Gary sighed. Fine. The customer is always right. Enjoy your free stuff. The ghost smirked and floated away, dragging 3 carts of cursed meat behind her. Korgoth's voice echoed over the intercom. Good job, Gary. Customer service score. 9 out of 10. Try upselling next time. Gary muttered, I hate it here. Chapter 4. The Employee Break Room, aka Torture Chamber. During his break, Gary went to the employee lounge. It was worse than the sales floor. Employees sat in chains, being force-fed expired hot dogs. The coffee machine dispensed pure agony. The vending machine only sold sadness. A zombie cashier groaned, Help! Me! Before a demon shocked him with a cattle prod. Gary turned to another employee. How long have you worked here? The man, covered in third-degree burns, whispered, Since the Roman Empire. Gary gulped. Have you ever tried quitting? The entire room went silent. A small goblin whispered, Never say the Q word. They'll hear you. Suddenly, alarms blared. A voice boomed over the intercom. Employee has attempted to quit. Sending disciplinary team. The walls opened, revealing an army of spider demons with tasers. Gary ran for his life. Chapter 5. Black Friday, Hell Edition. Gary thought Hellmart was bad. Then came Black Friday. At exactly midnight, the doors burst open, and thousands of screaming demons flooded inside. They trampled employees, bit each other, and fought over cursed televisions. Gary barely had time to react before a three-headed ogre grabbed him. "Where is the 90% off sale?" Gary stammered. That was a typo in the ad. The ogre roared and threw him across the store. Gary crashed into a stack of haunted blenders, which immediately turned on and chased him with spinning blades. Meanwhile, a demon with tentacles attacked the fitting rooms, screaming, "I need size medium!" Korgoth hovered above the chaos, sipping a coffee. "Excellent sales numbers today, team." Gary, bleeding and covered in blender bites, screamed, "I can't do this anymore." Korgoth laughed. "You can't quit, Gary, remember?" Gary clenched his fists. "Oh yeah? Watch me." Chapter 6. The Great Escape. Gary ran to the exit, dodging angry customers and exploding cash registers. But the moment he reached the doors, they vanished. A sign appeared. "No employees may leave Hellmart, ever." Gary groaned. "I should have worked in fast food." Then, he had an idea. What if he got fired? Chapter 7. The Worst Employee Ever. Gary stopped helping customers. He shoved old demons out of line. He ate all the haunted candy bars. He rewired the intercom to play polka music. Korgoth's voice boomed, "Gary, what are you doing?" Gary grinned. "Being the worst employee ever." Korgoth gasped, "You monster!" The store shook violently. Shelves collapsed. Customers fled in terror. Korgoth clutched his chest. "No! Hellmart cannot survive bad customer service." The walls crumbled. The ceiling collapsed. And then, boom, everything went dark. Chapter 8. The Exit Door. Gary opened his eyes. He was back on Earth, standing in front of a megamart. A now hiring sign flickered in the window. Gary laughed. Nope. He turned to leave, then dropped dead from a heart attack. When he woke up, he was back at Hellmart. A demon handed him a fresh name tag. "Welcome back, Gary. Your shift starts now." Gary screamed. The end, or just another shift? Dear Death, come back later. In the small town of Almora, life moved at the pace of a lazy Sunday afternoon. People woke up, worked just enough to survive, and spent their evenings gossiping about their neighbors. It was the kind of town where even death seemed to be in no hurry. At the heart of this sleepy town was Kamel Abdel Latif, a 52-year-old civil servant who had spent the last 30 years working in the Department of Death Registrations. His job? Officially, he was supposed to register deaths and process paperwork for funerals. Unofficially, he was known as the man who could make death wait for the right price. For a small sum of money, or sometimes a box of expensive cigars, Kamel could magically lose a death certificate, delay an autopsy, or even resurrect someone on paper. If a rich man needed more time to transfer his assets before officially dying, Kamel was the guy to see. If a criminal wanted to disappear, Kamel could register him as dead, ensuring that the law would never come looking. His philosophy was simple. Death is inevitable, but bureaucracy can slow it down. Chapter 2. An Unusual Request. One evening, as Kamel was closing his office, a tall man in a black suit and dark sunglasses walked in. The man had an unsettling presence, as if he had just stepped out of a funeral that hadn't even happened yet. Without saying a word, he placed a neatly folded piece of paper on Kamel's desk. Kamel, expecting another bribe, smiled and unfolded the paper. It was a death certificate request for Kamel Abdel Latif, with today's date. Kamel chuckled. Good one. Who sent you? Was it Hassan from the bakery? He always jokes about my job. The man didn't laugh. He simply pushed the paper closer. You need to process it. Immediately. Kamel's smile faded. There was something in the man's voice. Something final. Look, friend. If someone wants me dead, they should at least have the decency to wait until I actually die. The man adjusted his sunglasses. That's not how it works. The paperwork has been approved. Your time is up. Kamel felt a strange coldness creep over him. But he shook it off and did what he did best. He reached for his drawer, pulled out a stack of cash, and placed it on the table. "Let's pretend this never happened, huh?" The man didn't even glance at the money. "I don't take bribes." For the first time in his life, Camel felt a real sense of panic. He looked at his hands. Were they shaking? He reached for his pulse. Still there. He was alive. Yet, something felt off. Chapter 3. A Living Ghost. Camel rushed home, convinced it was just a weird prank. But as he walked through the streets, he noticed something strange. People weren't looking at him. The vendor who always called him Mr. Delay Death didn't even greet him. The stray dog that usually followed him home ignored him. When he arrived at his house, he saw a funeral tent set up outside. Dozens of people were gathered, whispering in hushed voices. Camel's stomach dropped. He pushed through the crowd, entering his own house. Inside, his wife was weeping, surrounded by mourners. His children sat in silence, dressed in black. And there, in the middle of the room, was his own photo, with a black ribbon around it. Camel's legs weakened. "I'm dead?" He turned to a mirror. His reflection was there. He was breathing. His heart was beating. Yet, in the eyes of the world, he was already gone. Chapter 4. The System Always Wins. He tried screaming. "I'm here. Can't you see me?" No one reacted. His wife walked through him as if he were air. His youngest son, crying, whispered, "Papa, I wish you were still here." Camel felt rage boiling inside him. He stormed back to his office, determined to find that man in black and undo this mistake. But his office key didn't work. And when he knocked on the door, a security guard yelled, "Go away! This place is closed for investigation. That fraud Camel died today." Camel's eyes widened. Not only was he declared dead, they were investigating his corruption. His entire empire of delayed deaths and forged documents was collapsing. Chapter 5. Bargaining with Death. Hours later, Camille sat on a park bench, staring at his hands. Still solid, still real. But he was now a ghost in the system. Finally, the man in black reappeared, standing next to him. Camel snapped, "Undo this! Bring me back!" The man shrugged. "Paperwork is final. You, of all people, should know that." Camel grabbed him by the collar. "I'll pay! I'll do anything!" The man sighed. "There's only one way back." "Tell me!" The man leaned in and whispered something in Camel's ear. Camel's face turned pale. He stepped back, shaking his head. "Number. That's insane." The man smiled. "Then enjoy your afterlife." And just like that, he was gone. Chapter 6. A New Beginning. Camel had no choice. If the only way back was what the man in black said, he had to do it. The next day, headlines exploded. Man declared dead, found alive. Officials call it a system error. Camel had forced his way back into the system. How? By registering himself as a newborn baby. Legally, he was now a one-day-old infant named Camel Abdel Latif Jr. Sure, he had to forge an entire new identity and start over from scratch. But at least, he wasn't dead. As he walked out of the hospital holding his own birth certificate, he chuckled to himself. Maybe next time, I'll just let death take me. Or maybe not. Nobody in the city of New Milton liked Arthur Grayson. He was a lawyer, and not the fun kind who makes clever arguments in court. No, Arthur was the type who sued old ladies for slipping on wet floors, defended corrupt billionaires, and even got murderers acquitted on technicalities. His motto? If the law has loopholes, it's my job to jump through them. For years, he built his fortune by manipulating the system. He didn't believe in morality, fairness, or justice. He only believed in winning. And then, one day, Arthur died. It happened in the most anticlimactic way possible. He choked on an olive at an expensive restaurant. 1 minute, he was negotiating a lawsuit over a faulty coffee machine. The next, he was on the floor, gasping for air. By the time the paramedics arrived, Arthur Grayson was legally dead. And that was when his real problems began. Chapter 2. Welcome to Hell. Mr. Grayson Arthur woke up in a waiting room. At first, he thought he was in a hospital, until he noticed that the receptionist had horns and the coffee machine was labeled Soul Extractor 3000. A deep, gravelly voice called his name. Arthur Grayson. Step forward. Arthur turned to see a 7-foot-tall demon in a suit sitting behind a desk, casually flipping through a thick file. His nameplate read, Beelzebub, Legal Department. Arthur frowned. Hell has lawyers? Beelzebub grinned, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Of course. Who do you think invented fine print? Arthur sat down. Listen, I think there's been a mistake. I wasn't that bad. Sure, I bent a few laws. Beelzebub interrupted, reading from the file. Let's see. Bribery, fraud, tax evasion, blackmail, defending a pharmaceutical company that knowingly sold poison, suing a charity for emotional damages. Oh, and getting an innocent man convicted for a crime he didn't commit. Arthur winced. Okay, but in my defense, I was really good at it. Beelzebub chuckled. Which is why you belong here. He snapped his fingers, and the floor beneath Arthur's chair vanished. Arthur screamed as he plummeted into the abyss. Chapter 3. Filing a lawsuit against the devil. Arthur landed face first on a burning rock. A small demon handed him a contract. Sign here. It confirms your eternal suffering. Arthur wiped the ash off his suit. I'm not signing anything without reading it first. The demon groaned. It just says we can torture you forever. Arthur smirked. That sounds legally questionable. Show me the fine print. The demon hesitated. Nobody had ever asked before. Arthur grabbed the contract, adjusted his glasses, and started reading. After a few minutes, his smirk grew wider. Aha! Clause 42b. It says that a damned soul can challenge their eternal damnation in a court of infernal law. The demon looked nervous. Nobody's ever done that before. Arthur grinned. Well, there's a first time for everything. I'm suing hell. Chapter 4. The court of the damned news spread fast. For the first time in millennia, hell's supreme court of eternal misery was summoned. Every demon, fallen angel, and condemned soul gathered to witness the trial of the century. Sitting in the judge's chair was Lucifer himself. He was tall, elegant, and dressed in a flawless black suit. He tapped his fingers impatiently. This is absurd. Nobody has ever won a lawsuit against me. Arthur adjusted his tie. Well, Lucifer, there's a first time for everything. The courtroom gasped. Lucifer's eyes narrowed. Did you just call me by my first name? Arthur shrugged. We're in court. I believe I have the right to address you properly. Lucifer sighed. Fine. State your case. Arthur pulled out his contract. Your Honor, I was sent to hell based on the assumption that I lived an immoral life. However, according to infernal law, there is no clear definition of immorality in the contract. Lucifer raised an eyebrow. Go on. Arthur continued. Furthermore, if I was truly evil, then I was merely doing what hell would approve of. By punishing me, you are contradicting your own principles. The demons whispered among themselves. Lucifer's expression darkened. That's a ridiculous argument. Arthur smiled. But is it legally incorrect? Lucifer clenched his jaw. Beelzebub, find a counter-argument. Beelzebub, still sweating, flipped through a legal book. Technically, he's right. Lucifer groaned. I should have never let lawyers into hell. Chapter 5. The Final Verdict. After 3 days of legal debate, Lucifer finally spoke. Arthur Grayson, you are officially the most annoying soul I've ever encountered. Arthur smirked. Thank you, Your Honor. Lucifer sighed. Fine. You win. You can leave hell. Arthur fist-pumped the air. Lucifer continued. But since you refuse to belong in either heaven or hell, there's only one place left for you. Arthur frowned. What do you mean? Lucifer snapped his fingers. A trapdoor opened beneath Arthur. He fell. Chapter 6. The Ultimate Punishment. Arthur landed in a fluorescent-lit office. There were cubicles, stacks of paperwork, a broken coffee machine. A sticky note on his desk read, "Welcome to Purgatory Inc. Your job, processing soul applications, forever." Arthur stared at the never-ending paperwork in horror. A demon in a cheap suit walked by. "Morning, newbie. You have 10,000 applications to process by lunch. Have fun," Arthur screamed. "No!" Somewhere in hell, Lucifer chuckled. Nobody escapes their fate. The end, or just the beginning?